we have been planning for Lake Mead's levels to drop for a significant period of time. We're looking at every single year what the next best evolution of our water conservation policy.
Las Vegas is drilling under Lake Mead to survive. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. Beneath one of the largest reservoirs in the United States, engineers carved a massive tunnel through solid rock just to keep water flowing into a city that was never supposed to exist. And here's what makes this even more unsettling. Even after spending $1.4 billion, even after years of engineering brilliance, it might not be enough, because the water is still disappearing. And the closer Lake Mead gets to something called dead pool, the closer Las Vegas gets to a future no one wants to imagine. So today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and terrifying urban experiments on Earth. A city built in a desert, running on a shrinking lake, trying to out-engineer nature itself. When most people think of Las Vegas, they picture excess, bright lights, massive casinos, luxury hotels, endless pools and fountains that seem to defy the desert surrounding them. It feels limitless. But the truth? Las Vegas is anything but limitless. It's fragile. This city sits in the Mojave Desert, one of the driest regions in North America. Rainfall is minimal. Natural water sources are almost non-existent, and temperatures can soar past 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. So how does a city like this exist at all? The answer is simple and risky. Lake Mead. Nearly 90% of Las Vegas's water comes from this single reservoir, created by the Hoover Dam in the 1930s. That water fills hotel rooms, keeps casinos cool, runs fountains, sustains over 2.3 million residents, plus around 40 million visitors every year. Everything depends on it. And now, that lifeline is shrinking. The rise of an impossible city. Las Vegas wasn't always a global hotspot. In fact, it started as a small desert stopover, a place where travelers could rest between long journeys. But everything changed in the early 20th century. The construction of the Hoover Dam brought jobs, electricity, and most importantly, water. Suddenly, the desert didn't seem so limiting anymore. Las Vegas began to grow. Casinos opened, entertainment exploded, tourism skyrocketed, and over time, the city transformed into something extraordinary. A place where water danced in fountains, where golf courses stayed green year-round, where luxury thrived in a place that should have remained barren. It was a triumph of human ingenuity, but it also came with a hidden cost. Because every expansion, every new hotel, every new neighborhood increased dependence on a single resource. And that resource wasn't infinite. For decades, it felt like the supply would never run out. The Colorado River flowed. Lake Mead shimmered under the desert sun. Pipelines stretched, reservoirs expanded, and engineers found ways to push water farther than ever imagined. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the balance began to shift. Rainfall patterns changed. Snowpacks in the Rockies, once reliable, started to shrink. Year after year, the water levels dropped. The white bathtub ring along Lake Mead grew higher, marking the steady decline. What was once a distant concern became impossible to ignore. Yet the city kept growing. More visitors arrived. More homes were built. More lights lit up the Strip each night. Las Vegas had mastered the art of defying nature. But now, nature was pushing back. The question was no longer how to expand, but how to survive. Could innovation once again rewrite the limits of the desert? Could conservation, technology, and policy come together fast enough? Or had the city finally reached the edge of what was possible? Because in a place built on ambition and illusion, the greatest challenge wasn't building something extraordinary, it was keeping it alive. Lake Mead, the lifeline. Lake Mead is more than just a reservoir. It's the backbone of the American Southwest. Formed by the Hoover Dam, it supplies water to millions of people across multiple states. At full capacity, it's enormous. But today, it's a shadow of what it used to be. Over the past 2 decades, Lake Mead has been steadily declining. Water levels have dropped so dramatically that entire sections of the lakebed are now exposed. Boats sit stranded where water once flowed. Marinas have had to be relocated multiple times. And along the edges of the lake, a stark white ring marks the previous high water levels. It's like a scar across the landscape, a visual reminder of loss. And it's not slowing down. Each year, the lake continues to shrink. And for Las Vegas, that's a problem unlike any other. Because nearly 90% of the city's water comes from this single source. There is no backup river, no hidden reserve waiting to take its place. Just Lake Mead, shrinking year by year. As the water drops, the system itself begins to strain. Intake pipes, once submerged deep below the surface, inch closer to open air. Pumps must work harder. Infrastructure must adapt. And the margin for error disappears. Authorities have already taken drastic steps. Deeper intake tunnels were drilled. Strict conservation measures were introduced. Water recycling became not just an option, but a necessity. And to its credit, Las Vegas responded. Grass lawns were replaced. Water use per person declined. Wastewater was treated and returned to the lake. But even these efforts face a harsh reality. You can conserve, you can innovate, you can stretch every drop, but you cannot create water where there is none. And as drought tightens its grip on the Southwest, the question grows more urgent with each passing year. What happens when the reservoir meant to sustain millions can no longer sustain itself? Because Lake Mead isn't just running low, it's testing the limits of an entire region's future. The dead pool threat. Let's talk about the term that keeps engineers and city planners up at night. Dead pool. It sounds dramatic, but it's very real. Dead pool is the point at which Lake Mead's water level drops so low that water can no longer flow through the Hoover Dam. No outflow, no distribution, no hydroelectric power. It's essentially the system shutting down. And the consequences would be massive. Cities that rely on this water, including Las Vegas, would face severe shortages. Power generation would collapse. Agriculture across the region would be affected. It's not just a local problem, it's a regional crisis. And here's the unsettling part. Lake Mead is moving closer to that level. Not tomorrow, not next week, but within a time frame that's no longer hypothetical. And that's why Las Vegas had to act. Not gradually, not cautiously, but decisively. Engineers began preparing for a future that once seemed unthinkable. They designed systems not for abundance, but for scarcity. One of the most critical solutions was simple in concept, but massive in execution. Go deeper. A third intake tunnel was carved beneath the lake, far below the original 2, deeper than the levels ever reached before. A safeguard against the falling water line. It was a race against time, because if the lake dropped below the older intakes, the city would lose access to its primary supply. But infrastructure alone wasn't enough. Policies changed. Restrictions tightened. Waste became unacceptable. Every drop started to matter. And something unexpected happened. Las Vegas, once known for excess, became a model for efficiency. Water use declined even as the population grew. But the question still lingers beneath the surface. Is adaptation enough when the source itself is disappearing? Because preparing for dead pool isn't just about avoiding disaster. It's about confronting a future where the old rules no longer apply. The third straw, a billion-dollar solution. Faced with the possibility of losing access to water, Las Vegas made a bold decision. They built the third straw. a $1.4 billion infrastructure project designed to secure the city's water supply, even as Lake Mead continues to drop. But this wasn't a simple fix. Engineers had to drill a massive tunnel beneath the lake through solid rock. The conditions were extreme: high pressure, geological challenges, technical complexity. It took years to complete, but in the end, they created something remarkable: a deeper intake system, lower than anything before it, capable of pulling water from parts of the lake that older systems couldn't reach. It was an engineering masterpiece, a solution born out of necessity. But like any solution, it came with limitations. Because the third straw doesn't create water, it only reaches what's left. It buys time, but it doesn't solve the problem. If Lake Mead continues to fall, even the deepest intake will eventually face the same fate. And engineers know it. That's the uncomfortable truth behind even the most impressive infrastructure. You can drill deeper, you can build smarter, you can delay the consequences, but you can't escape them forever. Still, the project represents something important: a shift in mindset. Las Vegas is no longer planning for growth without limits. It's planning for survival within them. Water budgets are tighter. Outdoor use is restricted. Recycling systems operate at near total efficiency. In fact, much of the water used indoors is cleaned and returned to Lake Mead, used again and again and again. It's a closed loop in the middle of an open desert. But even that system depends on one fragile truth: there must always be something left to recycle. Because in the end, no amount of engineering can replace a disappearing source, only manage its decline. How the third straw works. To understand the third straw, imagine drinking from a glass of water. At first, it's easy. But as the level drops, your straw struggles to reach the remaining liquid. So what do? You push the straw deeper. That's exactly what Las Vegas did. The third straw sits at a much lower elevation than previous intake pipes. This allows the city to continue drawing water even as the lake shrinks. It's clever, it's effective, but it's not a permanent fix, because here's the reality: the third straw doesn't create water. It doesn't refill the lake. It only gives access to what's left. And if the lake keeps shrinking, eventually, there won't be anything left to access. And that's the edge of the problem. The third straw extends the timeline, but it doesn't change the outcome. It turns a crisis into a countdown. And that countdown is shaped by forces far beyond the city itself: climate patterns, regional demand, decades of overallocation from the Colorado River. Las Vegas is just one piece of a much larger system, one that stretches across states, farms, and entire economies. So even if the city does everything right, it still depends on what happens upstream, on snowfall in distant mountains, on policies made hundreds of miles away, on choices it doesn't fully control. That's what makes the situation so fragile, because resilience here isn't just local, it's collective. And while Las Vegas has become a leader in conservation, the future of its water supply will be decided far beyond the Strip. Which leads to a deeper question: how do you sustain a modern city when its lifeline depends on a system under pressure from every side? Because in the end, the third straw isn't just a solution, it's a warning. Why this is a ticking clock. Las Vegas depends on Lake Mead for about 90% of its water. That's an extraordinary level of reliance. It means the city's entire existence is tied to a single resource. Now add another factor: growth. Las Vegas isn't slowing down. New developments continue to rise. Tourism remains strong. The population keeps increasing, so demand is going up. At the exact same time, supply is going down. That's a dangerous equation. It's like trying to run a marathon while losing energy faster than you can replenish it. Eventually, something breaks. And the question is, how long can Las Vegas keep going like this? So far, the city has managed something remarkable. Despite rapid growth, total water use hasn't increased at the same pace. In some years, it has even gone down. How? Aggressive conservation, strict regulations, and a complete rethinking of how water is used. Decorative grass is disappearing. Limits on outdoor watering are enforced. New homes are built with efficiency in mind from the start. Even casinos, symbols of excess, have adapted. Behind the scenes, water is carefully tracked, treated, and reused. What looks like abundance is often precision. But efficiency has limits. You can only cut so much. You can only reuse so much. At some point, growth and scarcity collide. And when they do, difficult decisions follow. Do you limit expansion? Do you restrict population growth? Do you redefine what the city can be? Because the future of Las Vegas may not be about how big it can grow, but about how well it can adapt. And in a place built on pushing boundaries, the next challenge isn't expansion, it's restraint. Climate change, the accelerator. If declining water levels weren't enough, climate change is making everything worse. Temperatures across the Southwest are rising, and higher temperatures mean more evaporation. Lake Mead is losing water faster than ever before. At the same time, the Rocky Mountains, where the Colorado River begins, are seeing reduced snowfall. Less snow means less meltwater. Less meltwater means less water flowing into the river, and that means less water reaching Lake Mead. It's a compounding problem. Less input, more loss, and no easy solution. Scientists have described this as a long-term shift, not just a temporary drought. Which means Las Vegas isn't just dealing with a short-term crisis. It's facing a new reality, one where the past can no longer guide the future. For decades, water systems in the Southwest were built on assumptions that rivers would keep flowing, that snow would keep falling, that the climate would remain relatively stable. Those assumptions are breaking down. What was once considered extreme is becoming normal. Hotter summers, longer droughts, more unpredictable seasons, and systems designed for yesterday are struggling to keep up with today. This changes everything. Planning can no longer rely on averages. It has to prepare for extremes, for worst-case scenarios that are no longer theoretical, but increasingly likely. And that forces a difficult shift in thinking. It's no longer about managing a drought. It's about adapting to permanent scarcity. A future where water is not just valuable, but limiting, where every decision, urban, agricultural, political, must account for less. Because climate change isn't just shrinking Lake Mead, it's redefining what's possible in the desert. And for Las Vegas, the challenge isn't just surviving the change, it's learning how to exist within it. Conservation efforts. To its credit, Las Vegas has taken water conservation seriously. In fact, it's one of the most efficient cities in the U.S. when it comes to water use. Indoor water is recycled and returned to Lake Mead. Strict regulations limit outdoor water use. Grass lawns are being removed and replaced with desert landscaping. And despite population growth, water consumption has actually decreased. That's impressive, but it's not enough. Because conservation can only stretch what's available. It can't replace what's missing. And if the source continues to decline, efficiency alone won't solve the problem. Because at some point, there's nothing left to stretch. Las Vegas has done what many cities haven't. It faced the problem early. It adapted quickly. It changed behavior at scale. But even the best-case scenario has limits. You can reduce waste. You can redesign systems. You can push efficiency to the edge. And still fall short if the supply keeps shrinking. That's the paradox. The city can do everything right and still be at risk. Because water in the Southwest is no longer just a local issue. It's shared, contested, stretched across states, industries, and millions of lives. Which means the future of Las Vegas won't be decided by conservation alone, but by cooperation. By agreements on how water is divided. By sacrifices made beyond city limits. By a collective recognition that the system as a whole is under strain. Because in the end, saving water in one city helps, but saving the system is what truly matters. The big question. So, where does that leave Las Vegas? Did the third straw save the city? Or did it just delay the inevitable? That's the question experts are still debating. Some see it as a brilliant solution. Others see it as a temporary patch, because at its core, this isn't just an engineering problem. It's an environmental one, and you can't engineer your way out of a disappearing resource forever. That's the line the city is walking, between innovation and limitation, between control and reality. The third straw proves what humans can do under pressure, how far we can push technology, how quickly we can adapt when the stakes are high. But it also reveals something deeper, that some problems don't have clean solutions, only trade-offs, only time bought, only consequences delayed. Las Vegas isn't alone in this. Cities around the world are beginning to face the same question. What happens when the systems you depend on start to fail? And the answer isn't simple. It won't come from one project, or one policy, or one breakthrough. It will come from a shift in how cities grow, in how resources are valued, in how limits are respected, because the future of Las Vegas is no longer just about survival in the desert. It's about redefining what sustainability really means when the environment sets the terms. And in that sense, the city isn't just facing a crisis, it's facing a turning point, ending. Las Vegas is a symbol of human ambition, a city that turned desert into spectacle. But now, it's facing its biggest challenge yet. Not money, not growth, but survival. Las Vegas drilled under Lake Mead to survive. But survival isn't guaranteed. And what happens next could redefine the future of cities in extreme environments. If you found this story fascinating, hit like. Subscribe for more deep dive documentaries, because sometimes the biggest risks aren't taken in casinos, they're taken in real life.